Friday, Saturday, 21st.
Could I have everybody's attention? We're about to begin. I'd like to call this meeting to order because with the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Aloka will lead us. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome back, Mitch.
Thank you,
We have the minutes of the October 1st, 2024 meeting. Do I have any additions, corrections, comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve? Motion to approve.
Second.
You're not. Mary can second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, George. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And I'd like to introduce Tom Vanderwood, who's going to discuss this new committee.
Thank you. As many of you who have participated in the Technical Planning Committee are aware, we have transitioned now to a new committee structure. So this committee is called the Transportation Committee. It is the successor of the Technical Planning Committee. In many ways, it is nearly identical, but there are a few minor changes. We provided a handout here that describes the roles and responsibilities of the committee, the membership, quorum requirements, and the meeting schedule. Roles and responsibilities are, as I said, essentially the same as the previous Technical Planning Committee, but they really fall down into a few broad tasks. And those are to review and provide recommendations to the full commission and executive board regarding our core planning documents. So as a metropolitan planning organization, we have the responsibility for three major documents. Those are the MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the Transportation Improvement Program, and the Unified Planning Work Program. Each one of those has its own acronym, MTP, TIP, and UPWP respectively. And there are other, in addition to those core documents, there are other documents and plans that this board will, or this committee will review and approve. Those would include the public participation plan, different plans that we've looked at over the past few months at the TPC would include like the CMAQ performance plan. So all of those documents will come to this committee. This is considered a technical committee. So we would be reviewing those here. And then this body would make a recommendation ultimately to our full commission or executive board, which is the final adopting authority. So again, many of you have been here before, so this may be unnecessary, but a lot of what this group will review will be TIP adoption, TIP amendments, and other transportation funding actions. So in addition to that, that major role, this group is also going to be a group that would advise the full commission on other policies and programs that are related to federal transportation funding. So again, this would be the group where we'd engage in most of the discussion and provide recommendations ultimately for policy positions that would be adopted at the executive board or full commission. I won't go through the entire list here, but those are the main tasks. The membership of the committee has been expanded from 12 commissioners to 15. So there have been commissioners appointed from each county, some of whom are here today. Thank you for being here. The full list of members is on the second page, and you'll see that there are representatives from all of those groups that are implementing transportation projects in the region. So that would include our local public agencies represented by the commissioners or their proxies. That would include the Indiana Department of Transportation, NICD, GPTC, as well as the subrecipients, transit subrecipients of NERC. In addition to that, because this group has folded in some other committees that have now been retired, there are some additional representatives. So for example, the PED, Pedal, and Paddle Committee, also known as Fleet PC group, no longer exists. So we've got on this committee now represented Bicycling Advocacy Group, as well as a representative of the county parks. We also have added to the committee some industry representatives and then representatives from our regional planning groups in Michigan, Southwest Michigan, and Northeastern Illinois. So those are the main changes there. Similar to in the past, only 3 voting members are required for a quorum. So business will take place at the committee, irrespective of whether or not everyone from the committee is actually present. And the reason for that is we have deadlines and timelines that we need to adhere to. So we have to keep actions moving forward. And then finally, the meeting schedule will be the same as the TPC, which is generally the first Tuesday of the month. But there will be no meetings during the months when the full commissioner or executive board doesn't meet. So that would be, I believe next year there will be no meetings in in April. June or July. Okay, and then there may be some other times where meetings get changed because of a conflict with a holiday or with some other event. So that being said, this is the Transportation Committee. Welcome. I'll take any questions if there are any related to the role of the committee, membership.
We should mention that 2 things. We will still be using working groups for certain pursuits, task force as well. And the other thing is that this committee will allow for proxies for the board members who are appointed. So we'll need some kind of letter, possibly email, back to the staff, so we can keep track of who is representing what agency or entity. So that's what we have. Do you have any questions? Apparently not. Let's move on. We have no, pardon?
Yeah, the county parks and the bike advocacy organization, have they been advised or have those slots been filled?
That's a good question. Yeah, not every slot has been filled yet. So we're kind of fading in.
Okay, all right, good.
Good question.
We haven't had our membership list that long, so
Okay.
bear with us. Something new. We have no public comment today. Is there anybody here to make public comment? I see none. So we'll proceed with introductions for the benefit of the secretary. I'm Kevin Brights, the Porter County Surveyor and Chair of this committee.
Tom Vanderwood, Nursing Staff.
Ford Baum, Nursing Staff.
David Wright, Dairy Public Transit.
Ryan Lissett, Dry Clean, Indiana.
David Phelps, Mineral.
You're welcome.
Kelly Wanger, South Shoreline.
George Topol, Union Township, Porter County.
Mary Janice Dyer, Town Council.
Mark Liddell, Town of Chesterton.
Bob Thompson, Valparaiso.
Max Rainlander, Valparaiso.
Meredith Stowell, Nursing Staff.
Christopher Murphy, Structure Point.
Terry Martin, Karen Gill.
Ryan Snedeker, BFNS. Evan Lavalette, First Group Engineering. Carl Prensky, Emergency Staff.
Grace Pettigrew, emergency staff.
Mitch Barloza, Emergency Staff.
Thank all of you for being here and working with us. It's the best way to keep attendance. We'll go on to planning, 3.1, 2024 second quarter safety, travel time, reliability, freight and congestion update. Great strategy.
All right. Good morning. I'm going to be providing some updates for our third quarter of 2024 performance measure updates that will cover safety, reliability, freight, and congestion. Just as a refresher, the bipartisan infrastructure law requires state and MPOs to set targets in several national performance areas and track performance to demonstrate whether the federal transportation investments are improving transportation system performance. So staff previously presented updates on these performance measures at the Surface and Transportation Committee meetings as well as previously at the Technical Planning Committee, but moving forward, these updates will be given at the Transportation Committee meetings. So we'll start with safety updates. So in quarter three, there were 5,739 collisions in the Northwest Indiana region, covering Lake, Porter, and LaPorte counties. Of those crashes, 1,054 resulted in injury and 18 resulted in fatalities. So as a percentage, about 18.3% were injury-related crashes and 0.4% were fatal-related crashes. Compared to quarter two, we had about 180 less crashes, and compared to quarter three of 2023, we had an 8.9% decrease in total crashes, as well as a 13.6% decrease in injury-related crashes. So specifically looking at Lake County, you can see that the total crashes from quarter two to quarter three decreased. You can see the green bar represents quarter three of 24, and the light blue represents quarter two, and the dark blue all the way to the left represents quarter three of 2023. So those are kind of the three main bars we'll kind of be examining. So compared to quarter two of 2024, for Lake County, most metrics decreased except the total number of injuries and the number of incapacitating injuries, which were higher in quarter three than in quarter two. From year to year, Lake County tends to have most crashes occur in quarter three. But compared to quarter three of 2023, total collisions reported was down compared to that of 2023, about 500 crashes less. So most metrics for Lake County were less than the quarter three metrics, except for incapacitating injuries, which were slightly higher. One of the most notable statistics for Lake County is that fatalities decreased from 15 to 8, so by almost half, in quarter three of 24 as compared to quarter three of 2023. So most crashes that occur in Northwest Indiana occur in Lake County, about 65 to 70%, whereas LaPorte County contains the fewest crashes in our area with approximately 12% of all total crashes. So for quarter three, you can see that the total number of collisions stayed pretty consistent, as did the number of injury collisions, although the total number of injuries increased, which might indicate that a higher number of people were injured in quarter three in roughly the same amount of crashes. So compared to quarter three of 2023, total collisions decreased, as did injury collisions. So again, looking between the green bar and the dark blue bar on the graph there. So LaPorte, unlike Lake County, tends to see most of its crashes in quarter four, not in quarter three. So Porter County has about 18% of total crashes in the Northwest Indiana region. So from quarter two to quarter three of 2024, there was a slight decrease in the total collisions and the property damage collisions. However, injury collisions and the total number of injuries increased from quarter two to quarter three. And then comparing quarter three of 2023 to 2024, there were more total collisions as opposed to Lake and LaPorte County, which kind of saw decreases in total collisions from 2023 to 2024. Although there were slightly less injury resulting collisions, as well as the total number of injuries between 2023 and 2024 in Porter County. So next we'll talk about some updates with our travel time reliability. And so this metric kind of examines how reliable, when you're taking one trip, you are to have that same travel time. So this metric is examined for overall vehicles as well as just for trucks, which we'll talk about later. And it also examines travel time reliability on the interstate versus non-interstate roadways. So overall travel time reliability on interstates is definitely a metric that the Northwest Indiana area struggles with a bit. However, the targets that are set are state targets, so other areas of the state will kind of help balance out Northwest Indiana's kind of heavier portion of this metric. So as you can see, from quarter two to quarter three, this metric performs not as strong as quarter two. But compared to quarter three of 2023, you can see that these numbers were a bit higher in all 3 months. And then if we look at the map, this kind of shows us a geographic representation of where we're having those travel times that are less reliable. So most of that occurs in the I-80, I-94 corridor between I-65 and the state line. So travel time reliability on the non-interstate roadways is definitely a much easier metric for our region to hit, with most months being above that monthly target. I believe in 2023, the only month that didn't hit that target was November. So hopefully this year we will have all of our monthly targets met. From quarter two to quarter three, this metric did perform stronger in quarter three, as well as perform stronger than it did in 2023. And again, just a map to kind of show where there are some hot spots. You can see the intersection of US 41 and US 30 has a little bit of a metric that's not quite as strong, as well as the US 6 and State Road 49 intersection. But overall, performed well in this non-interstate travel time reliability metric. So next we'll talk about our truck travel time reliability. And this metric is only examined on the interstate. It doesn't look at the non-interstate roads. So again, this is definitely an area that our region kind of struggles with a bit. Again, quarter three did not perform quite as strong as it did in quarter two, as well as I think travel times were a bit more reliable in 2023 than they were for quarter three of 2024. And again, this kind of just shows where exactly We have less reliable travel times. And I would say where it is more reliable would be in the urban areas of our, the more rural areas of our interstates. The more urban areas tend to see less reliable truck travel times. So our congestion update. So the Federal Highway produces a dashboard where they report these numbers. And so even from a week ago, they have not yet released these September numbers. So I just wanted to report on what was available. And again, this metric is a little different than the travel time reliabilities, because the travel time reliabilities examine the whole state's achievement towards that goal, whereas the peak hour of excessive delay per capita metric examines for just the Chicago urban area because of its size. It's over that threshold that it does need to report out on this statistic. So with that preference, you can see that our area definitely has a bit more excessive delay during peak hours of travel per capita. And again, our area is also combined with the rest of the Chicago urban area. But so although this map does look like things aren't going very well, we are meeting our monthly targets. And then the percent of non-single occupancy vehicle travel, these are the same numbers that I reported for quarter 2. These numbers are taken from the American Community Survey's 2022 5-year estimate, and I'm hoping that they'll have the 2023 numbers available for the quarter 4. So just to go over this, about 80% of travel occurs in all 3 counties by single vehicle, single occupant, and then the numbers of public transportation as well as carpool differ slightly between the counties, with Lake County having the highest percentage of public transit, LaPorte County having the highest percentage of carpooling, and Porter County having the highest percentage of other, which can include modes of transportation like walking or biking, or ride-hailing services such as a taxi or Uber of that nature. And with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Can we get this straight email?
Say that.
That last slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions for Rose? If not, this is partly in response to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021 that requires the commission to set annual performance measure targets. INDOT has to do likewise. They have done theirs in August 2024, and was a collaboration between INDOT and NERC to arrive at the targets for them and for us too.
Okay.
No other questions? Now we'll move on to the resolution. Pardon?
Good job.
Thank you. The staff did a great job, I think. Resolution 2413. Grace's presentation will go to Tom.
Thank you. And it's a related presentation. Let's see. All right. So Grace just went through our annual or our quarterly reporting on the performance measures. What I'm going to talk about today is target setting for our annual target setting for our performance measures. So as background, and Grace touched on this, since the passage of the MAP 21 transportation authorization, the federal government has required that states and metropolitan planning organizations set performance targets and then track those track performance measures to determine, are we moving toward our target or are we moving away? And those targets are often, in many cases, linked to a funding source. So for those of you who were on the TPC, you might recall a month or two ago, I presented our CMAQ performance plan. That was a plan that identified performance measures for congestion and air quality, and identified the targets and how we were going to get to those targets. In addition to those CMAQ targets, we also have safety performance targets, which are linked to the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which is a funding source, a federal funding source. So our obligation as the MPO is to establish these annual targets in consultation with the State Department of Transportation, INDOT, and then to track and report our progress on those measures. And those measures have to be included in our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So we're supposed to be identifying strategies in the plan to meet those targets, and then as well as in our TIP, identifying projects that will implement those policies. So the HSIP or HSIP program identifies 5 targets that we have to adopt. Those are the number of fatalities, the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, number of serious injuries, rate of serious injuries, and then the number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. Those are also called the VRU, fatalities and injuries, meaning vulnerable road user. Since NERC has started doing this, we've worked with INDOT, who has developed statewide targets, and then at the MPO level, we have adopted those statewide targets. And then since 2024, the federal government has required that our targets actually be declining targets. So we can't say that next year we'll have more fatalities than we had last year. We have to say that conditions will improve and that we will have a safer road network. So INDOT, although in the past they did have targets that actually increased, as of 2024, they're basing their targets on a 2% straight line reduction from the 2021 5-year running average. So the 2025 recommended targets that have been submitted by INDOT to the federal government, and which we are recommending adoption at the MPO level, are for fatalities. We're recommending a target of 812. That's down from 876.3. For the fatality rate, we're recommending 1.009 fatalities per 1,000 vehicle miles traveled. That's again down from 1.072. Serious injuries, 3,032, down from 3,281. Serious injury rate down to 3.402. And then the VRU / non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, we're recommending a target of 363. And again, obviously we don't want to achieve 812 fatalities. That's not the goal, but we are recommending projects that will move us in that direction.
The rest of the report has no more than.
Correct, right. We don't want to exceed that. So here's just, I'm going to go through each different measure and just kind of show you how these targets kind of interact with the actual totals and running averages over the past 10 years or so. So on this slide, on each one of these slides, you'll see there will be one line that'll have the total fatalities, and you can see it kind of goes up and down every year. And then there's the 5-year running average, which is shown in blue on this. It's kind of difficult to see on the screen, but it's kind of that line that kind of goes up diagonally to the upper right. And then our targets. So you can see, again, on this graph, you see that total fatalities there have been years where they've gone up and there's years when they've gone down. But generally speaking, the 5-year running average is not declining. So we're seeing an increase over the years in fatalities. Our targets beginning at the 21, so beginning at 21, that's where the, so this was actually the INDOT statewide target for the longest time, which was just the 5-year running average. But as of 2024, they've kind of bookmarked 2021 and had a 2% decline. So this is where we are here, as you can see, even though it is it's only a 2% decline, in light of the fact that the 5-year running average is actually moving up. It is an ambitious target. Okay, so similarly, the fatality rate. Now this one doesn't show, this chart doesn't show the running average as being different from the target, because the 2% decline is built into the running average. So this line here shows our target of going down. But again, you can see the rate, it sort of fluctuates from year to year. Serious injuries, annual serious injuries. Again, it's a similar story, although the 5-year running average actually declines. But though it peaked and it kind of spiked a little bit in the last few years. One interesting, I guess, thing to think about when you see these serious injuries is that when we do our safety planning, for example, we usually don't distinguish between a serious incapacitating injury and a fatality. And the reason for that is that the line that separates the two is kind of beyond the control of safety planning or safety activities. Somebody could be hit in a car, and by some stroke of luck, they could survive or they could die. And there's no practical difference in those two. But we do set different targets because that's what we're required to do. So again, you'll see that we have a declining target here. Nothing really that unique about this target. Again, you'll see that we have the running average and the target is combined. And then finally, the non-motorized targets. Again, this actually tracks pretty closely to the overall fatalities. You see annual fluctuations, but an overall running average increasing. And again, we're recommending a declining target of 363. So that is, again, we're recommending that we're asking that this group recommend that the commission adopt Resolution 24-13, which would allow us to forward those targets to INDOT. The resolution that we have here on page 6 of your agenda packet actually does two things. One, it adopts the targets that I've listed here. And then 2, it amends the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, NWI 2050 Plus, and the Transportation Improvement Program to incorporate these updated 2025 targets. So you'll see, I believe you received the handout. This document is going to be an additional appendix that will be added on to the end of the NWI 2050 Plus plan. And it's a very simple list of all of the performance measures. So in addition to the safety performance measures, this also has our congestion and air quality measures included on it as well. So with that, I'll take any questions, if there are any.
David?
Ever heard of the phrase Vision Zero? Has that been considered here?
So Vision Zero is sort of on a different timeline from these annual targets. I have heard of Vision Zero, and if you wouldn't mind explaining it.
Well, basically, it's a more long-term plan to eventually eliminate fatalities at these levels. Indianapolis had a Vision Zero task force, and I think their target is to eliminate fatalities by 2035. I mean, it's still, an idea, but it's a goal that doesn't assume there's an acceptable amount of fatalities, on our roadways and on our transportation networks. It's in my notes, but the only other place outside of the Indianapolis discussion in my notes is the City of Gary safety plan. They're working on the safety plan. I think they got a grant. I forget where it came from, but there are going to be some Vision Zero elements in that. According to Health by Design, no other metro area outside of central Indiana has started to formulate a Vision Zero plan. But if it's at least become relevant at 401 Broadway City Hall, it may be something that we should look at gravitating towards in the future. I mean, I think you'll have asked that question before. I mean, why are we, basically approving a resolution saying we're going to be okay with 800 deaths, rather than just reshaping and retooling the conversation to this is where we want to be, a decade or two from now.
Yes, no, I think you stated it well, David. There is a bit of as I kind of pointed out at the beginning, we don't really want to achieve, any fatalities. That's not, we shouldn't have a target of death.
Yeah.
Now this is meant to be an incremental approach towards decreasing the number of fatalities and decreasing the number of injuries year after year. Vision Zero is a specific kind of initiative that, as you rightly stated, says that our vision for deaths should really be zero. We don't want any deaths on our roadways. And how do we make that happen? And then there's a whole, it's called the Safe System approach that's advocated by the U.S. Department of Transportation. A number of communities that have received Safe Streets and Roads for All grants, I believe, have adopted Vision Zero resolutions as a component of that. Are you aware about it?
You have to do a pledge that you're going to strive towards zero deaths at a certain point. But yes, you're right, it's a safe system approach. They really don't say Vision Zero within the SS4A grants.
Oh, no, they don't use that specific term.
They don't use that specific term.
Yeah, so my understanding is that, a lot of, that is the direction that I think we are moving. I know that NERC has not adopted a Vision Zero resolution, but it's certainly something that we can discuss further.
It may be worthwhile, depending on how relevant and how much of it is incorporated in Gary's safety plan. Once they approve that, I forget where they are at it now. That's bad because I'm on that steering committee. But once it's done, they should be invited to the presentation there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Tom, just a quick question. You mentioned percent of non-interstate road highway systems being in good condition.
Yes.
Percentage drop, is that based on the funding, that relationship that we're talking about? Our goal was 50% in 2023, and then now it's 48% in 2025. Saying the bridges in good condition. Is that just because of the funding level, possibly?
That is a good question as well.
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
These, and just so you know, these targets were adopted separately.
Yeah.
So we're just moving them from one area of the plan to another. I can look into that. I would imagine that, all of these are based on some work that's done at the state level where they're evaluating the existing conditions and what our goal for the next year or whatever period of time each one of these goals is associated with. So some of these are 2-year targets. Some of them are, like with CMAQ, for example, it's a 4-year, and then you can adjust your targets based on your performance. So I don't know specifically that those two that you've identified.
Okay. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
No worries.
Well, the good news is the don't want any more than 1.5%
Right.
poor condition.
For a future condition.
But we're talking about pavements in good condition, it doesn't make sense to me either. Any other questions? Tom? If not, I have a motion.
Make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And this is to forward with a favorable recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We'll move on to programming. By the way, that motion, I think, had a consensus, so. Oh, we're waiting for Charles. It's the same presentation as Environmental Policy Committee, or better?
No, this is actually a presentation, the environmental, they just didn't have a, there's actually a PowerPoint presentation here.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. This presentation was only on infrastructure or surface transportation projects. As of when I wrote this, we've only received some transit projects. We haven't received all transit projects. So I did not include the transit projects in this discussion here. Because those come from a different pot of funds from the FTA. Again, this is the 2050, this is based on the 2050 plus. Our TIP must follow our long range plan. So Invest NWI is our term for our NOFA application, our Notice of Funding Availability. That's how our application, and our TIP is titled Invest NWI. This is for the fiscal years 2026 through 2030. We're mainly focused on funding projects in 29 and 2030 because it takes, as I explained, as I have explained in the past, it does take several years for projects to go through the design and the right-of-way process. So it does take 4 years minimum anymore to get a project. So we're looking at projects, funding projects in 29 and 30. This year, our NOFA application was open from September 10th to October 18th. We estimate that there's $108 million available. And of that $108 million for those 2 years, $36 million was going to be available for surface transportation or infrastructure, and $72 million is going to be for transit. Again, two different funding. The surface transportation projects or funding comes from Federal Highway, and the transit comes from the Federal Transit Agency. We did have less funding this year in our NOFA compared to previous years, and that's mainly because of a couple different reasons. One, our urbanized area was redefined. If you remember last year, we gave a presentation on, and we spoke with all the communities on how what our new urbanized area is going to look like. And when the Census Bureau came out with their urbanized area, they actually shrunk our urbanized area. So even though Northwest Indiana grew, our urbanized area kind of shrunk. So have been telling folks, and we need to grow what's in our urbanized area and hopefully limit the projects or the development outside that urbanized area. We are hopeful that in the next census that those will be infilled. Right now we have actually 5 different urbanized areas in Northwest Indiana. We have the Chicago urbanized area, which is most of Lake and Porter. We have the Michigan City urbanized area, which is Michigan City and LaPorte. New one, and then we had the Lowell urbanized area. That's always been kind of an urbanized area. Hasn't been connected. As with this last 2020 census, 2 new urbanized areas were created. Actually, 3 new urbanized areas were created. Westville, but that's kind of outside of our scope. And then we have, there's 2 other areas. One was the Valparaiso Sherwood Forest is a new urbanized area. That's a group 2. We get funds for them now too, so I do keep track of those funds. And then we have a Winfield Lake and Four Seasons urbanized area. And that is in the same, it's in the same realm. It's a group 3. It's a small urbanized area. So that includes Winfield Lake, Four Seasons. That'd be in the same group that Lowell is in, that Westville is in also. So, because, and mainly because of the Winfield Lake Four Seasons, which prior to 2020 was in the Chicago urbanized area, and the Valparaiso was in the Chicago urbanized area. Because Winfield coming out, we saw a decrease in the Chicago urbanized area funding. And if you combine which we did, we combined the Valparaiso Sherwood Forest and the Chicago urbanized area funding here at the commission, so that we can fund projects in the Valparaiso area if they were larger. Most of the projects are larger than the 2.1 million that they get annually. And it also helps when they don't have a project in that year. So we combine those. But we saw the decrease is mainly because of, like I said, they shrunk the urbanized areas. And then you take out the Winfield Lake Four Seasons urbanized area, and that's where our decrease came from. And also less funding there's still inflation going on. It is slowing, but we are still seeing increases in just about everything else. With the labor as well as getting items. And there are still items that still have long lead times. Now, why do we have, there's also coming in, we have 2 large transformative projects in the region that we've said that we need to fund. We are taking that into account. And T-Rock, and I believe other communities have in T-Rock as well as other places have mentioned that we need to keep those transformative projects moving. They tend to be sucking a lot of air out of the room when we talk about projects, and if we can get those projects done and off the books, then we should have more funding available for other projects. But we did have a NOFA, and most of the people, I did get a lot of questions why we're having a NOFA if we don't have this much funding and we have these transformative projects we need to go. Well, we still want to show that we have a continued need for funding. And we still have to fund projects under the HSIP, CMAQ, CRP, and PROTECT programs. Those projects, they have a dedicated funding source. It's not like STBG, which is a general catch-all. But we do need to show, as Tom and Grace mentioned earlier, we still need to show safety. We still need to show improvement in our congestion and air quality, as well as CRP and PROTECT. We had 26 applications for surface transportation, and this is kind of a bar graph on where the applications came from. Not surprisingly, roadway modifications. This includes intersection improvements, intersection modifications, whether they're safety or congestion related. We had 10 applications. There was one project for transit expansion that was put in for CMAQ funding. We did have 3 projects for planning, 3 projects for new roadways. Multi-use trails received 1 project. Environment received 1 project. Complete Streets received 4 projects. And Air Quality had received 3. Again, going back to the 26 different applications we received, this just shows who the different communities that submitted applications for those. We've got a great diversity. Some of the big leaders have always put in big projects. So we did get, and again, just showing who submitted projects. Kind of some other fun metrics if you want to get into the nerdy stuff. The average score was 53.44. That is down from the past, so maybe we've tightened up tried to fill in the potholes and so on and so forth on the applications. So, so those of you who got lower and didn't think your project was going to score high enough, we can kind of see that the average score did go down. In the past, I think in the 22, the average score was 74, I think it was. So you can see it's gone down. So just because you had a score of 50 doesn't mean that you should throw out your application. Of the total requests for PE was $10 million. Total request for right-of-way was 7.8. This is requests. This isn't the total for PE or right-of-way. And then CN was 51 million, almost 52 million that the requests were for. And then of course, 12.5% of that is 6.8%. And then again, this is the request for the different funding programs. STBG at the bottom is the largest. So there were 10 projects in there that were requesting STBG funds. CMAQ funds requests for CMAQ funds there were 7 projects, 6 for HSIP, 1 for transportation alternatives, which is our multi-use trails. We didn't get any projects for CRP, and the Protect received 2 different projects, or 2 projects requesting Protect funds. Next steps. So now through January 10th, 2025, staff is going to be reviewing those applications for completeness and then scoring. As we've always said, we're not going to throw out projects if you're missing something. So we want the best projects to go forward. So if you're missing something, we'll reach out to you and say, hey, we need this, so get it to us by the time the working group meets. So if you're missing a signature, we're not just going to throw it out. I want to make that clear. So the working groups, which is the previous topical committees, are going to be reviewing projects and with the different LPAs in the room. So it's not like we're going to do this behind closed doors. It will be behind closed doors only in the sense that it is winter out. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. But no, nothing's going to be behind closed doors. And then we will be submitting those to the Transportation Committee with recommendations. And that'll be through January 10th. And then January 10th through the 31st, NERC will be modeling it modeling our tip for air quality conformity. And then on February 11th, the Transportation Committee will meet and vote to recommend a list of local projects to add to 2026 2030 tip. We've got February 11th in here. However, that could move to March. We do have a 1 month lead time. Normally in the past, we would take this recommendation for our tip to the April commission meeting. But as we heard earlier from Kevin, that there is no April commission meeting, so it'll be in May. We do need to get that in there, or get approval, so we can get our tip out for a public comment for 30 days. So either the month of March or the month of April, we would have our public comment period. We're shooting for the February 11th, because that way if there's an error or if we get delayed, then our schedule isn't at risk. And then March 10th through April 10th, we're gonna, like I said, we'll do our tip will be put out for public comment. And that could move somewhere in there. And then on May 15th, it'll be presented to the NERC Commission for approval. And if it's approved, then it'll be sent to NDOT and the US DOT, which is Federal Highway and FTA, for their approvals. And then we'll get our letters back, hopefully in a more timely manner than in the past, our last one. So
Your lips to God's ears.
yes. Is there any other questions? David?
Why did we again have two separate solicitations for transit and highway? We did this a couple years ago and it was fixed at that time. But even then, I threw up a red flag that this is something that the feds frown upon. Where, it seems like, and just based on the timeline, it seems like highways were handled first, and then after the fact, a solicitation went out to the operators, and we'd already submitted our projects during the first November. There were transit-specific fund categories and applications that weren't updated for 2024, for 2029 and 30 until after the fact. We feel kind of like an afterthought.
So the reason that there were two different funding was because what I just presented today was on the Federal Highway funding pots. Now, any of the transit operators can apply for some of those. I mean, granted, I like I said, I don't have all of those numbers, so any of you or Nick D or any of the other transit operators are more than welcome to apply for highway funding for expansion projects. We're not going to kick those out,
right?
Like I said.
Until the request came out ahead of, I think, Thursday's roundtable, I was under the impression that original NOFA was a NOFA for all fund categories. And I was kind of confused when we got that request for projects that are due.
So, and that was initially our proposal.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think NERC did not do a good job of getting it out, and a lot of that's on me. Getting out the notice to the transit operators. So that's why we are working with the transit operators to get their projects in a timely manner. And then still give us time to look at those projects and get those out to the transit operators roundtable for their discussion on or their projects, or if they're going, if they need highway funds, that's where the transit operators roundtable would look at it also. But like I said, we have two different funding sources. for the different funding pots, the FTA and the federal highways. So that's why that's why they're two different NOFA windows, so to speak. So, but that is,
I'd like to see some.
well, we've never, and in the past, we've always kept them at the same time.
Mhm.
We've never had them separated. So that is, I mean, we'll take that into consideration for the next time. Any other questions?
I don't see any more questions for Charles. If not, let's move on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. And close the door on your way out. We have all open door meetings here, so. Topical committee reports. Do we have anybody representing one of our NERC committees that has a report? I don't see anybody. Reports from the planning partners.
All right, good morning, everyone. Ryan Lissick at Drive Clean, Indiana. Good morning. So we have some grant funding coming out through the EPA. It's the Solid Waste Infrastructure Program. It's due December 20th. This is focused on municipal solid waste management and focused on recycling and composting and reuse of materials. This is a 3-year project. There's $58 million available. Grant awards range from $500,000 all the way up to $5 million. There is no cost share involved in this, but this is a good opportunity for municipalities across the board. The Indiana National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Grants Round 2 from INDOT will be coming out soon. This is 80% funding for DC fast charging locations that are within a mile off of the alternative fuel corridors. The charging, fueling, and infrastructure grants round 3 is going to be coming out in the second quarter of 25. This is 80% funding for electric, hydrogen, CNG, and propane. And then we have the EPA Clean School Bus Rebate Program, which applications are due January 9th. Funding is for the replacement of diesel buses, up to $325,000 for priority schools if they're replacing with electric, $30,000 for propane buses. We have Partners for Clean Air scholarships, $2,500 for high school seniors. And then just some project updates. We have the EPA Clean Ports program that was just recently announced with awards. There's 3 applications that were submitted in Indiana between IDEM and the Ports of Indiana. Only one of those applications was awarded for an emissions study down at Jefferson and Mount Vernon ports. The charging, fueling, and infrastructure round 2 submission from IDEM, INDOT, and Drive Clean Indiana was submitted for, requested $39 million for a $50 million project and 124 DC fast charging stations and 28 level 2 ports. There's 3 locations in NERC territory where funding was requested at $10.8 million with a $14.3 million total project cost. And then we have some events coming up on the 19th of this month. We're going to be hosting an event over at Michigan City at the Blue Chip Casino with National Renewable Energy Laboratory for light duty fleet electrification. This is a free event. I do have handouts available. And then on the 20th, we have our 2024 annual conference and awards expo, which we have rebranded the React Expo at the Blue Chip Casino. I do have handouts available as that, and I do have discount codes too. And then on December 3rd, we have a governmental fleet EV ride and drive over at Tire Rack in South Bend. This is a closed track, I guess a short course racetrack, but you'll be able to get behind the wheel of multiple electric vehicles and really test the limits. And then we have some events coming up next year, but that pretty much sums it up. I do have handouts available and able to answer any questions.
Well, just that first grant you talked about, solid waste recycling, what was the name of that?
It's Solid Waste Infrastructure, and the acronym is SWIFR. It's from the EPA.
Sorry, when was that due? Next year or something?
Yes, it's due December 20th. And that's a 3-year program.
Any more questions for Ryan? He's offering a lot of money today.
Not my money, but
Okay.
You got anything else? Thank you.
Anybody else like a hand from Ryan?
Oh, no, I think I have enough.
Thank you, Ryan. Let's go on to staff announcements. Do we have any? Yes, we don't.
Kevin, actually, can I say something?
Oh,
to you?
sure.
Just as far as, you may notice Bob has Beth's name tag. Yeah.
Well, I know them both, so they're interchangeable.
Beth will no longer be with the city as of this Friday. She's taking a job with National Parks. So filling in as interim director of planning and transit is our own Bob Thompson. So just want to let the group know.
Congratulations. It's highly recommended.
Thank you.
The next executive board full commission meeting will be December 5th in this room at 9 a.m. And leadership committee doesn't meet till the 14th of January, and economy and place committee January 8th. And we're scheduled for Tuesday, January 7th.
Then you said February 11th.
Did I say February 11th?
No, that's, no, there is a February 11th, but the
Okay.
next one is February, or January.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Transportation committee will meet January 7th, Tuesday. We've got working groups and all sorts of other dynamics going on, so bear with us while
Musical meetings.
we're still decorating, bear with us. Anybody else for the cause of the good? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second.
Anybody against? All those for, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
I see my calendar.